I have been struggling with this question in my mind for some time. I have many brothers and sisters who I know earnestly who want to follow Yeshua and truly believe in him, but consider me to be legalistic because I choose to keep the commandments. They believe that the old has passed and it's no longer necessary to keep it. I know that we are not saved by keeping the commandments, that we are saved by grace through faith. Praise Yahweh. But what are the implications for those that believe in Yeshua but don't keep the commandments, i.e. the Sabbath and other appointed times, versus observances of feasts rooted in pagan tradition? Will these brethren be in the kingdom, or will they be turned away on that day, according to Matthew 7:22? I fear and I worry for their souls, and I've tried many times to talk to them, but only to be rebuked. Is my fear misplaced? Okay, so very, very good question. I'm delighted to be able to have this opportunity to answer it. Matthew 7 verse 22 is what he pointed out. Let me read it. On that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy, cast out demons, and do all these mighty works in your name? And I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. Okay, you guys are very familiar with this, I'm sure, most of you who are listening. So there's these people who do things in his name, who are considering themselves Christians, but yet who did lawlessness. And because of this lawlessness they did, they went ahead and were declared to depart. So, just while we're here, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever told a white lie, maybe even in the last week? Have you maybe stolen something? Have you pirated music or software? Have you maybe not loved perfectly your spouse as you should have this week? Have you looked upon a woman with lust by accident this week? Have you desired worldly possessions of another? Have you desired the career of another, the success of another, jealous of someone else in other ways? Have you been impatient? Have you sinned from anger? Or maybe have you even sinned in ways you didn't even know that you were sinning? You didn't even know it was a sin, okay? The answer should be yes. Like, we all do stuff. And often, if it's not some of the things I listed, it's something you don't even know you did. We've done lawlessness this week, guys. It's a problem, right? Like in Matthew 7, right, he's saying, I will depart from you, I never knew you, you worker of lawlessness. So are we all doomed? Like, I'm giving this perspective because sometimes we think of other Christians and we say, they don't do these things that I do, and so therefore they're lawless and in trouble for losing salvation. Okay, and I understand because we think of, when we say keeping the commandments, guys, let's just be honest here. Sometimes we just think about a few certain ones. We don't think about the 95% of the rest. The greatest commandments is rooted around love. The Sabbath and the feast days, that's important. I have teachings on them. I love it. It's important. Don't get me wrong. And certainly anyone who does not keep the fourth commandment, that is the Sabbath, certainly that is sin, because they're breaking the commandment, and the sin is a transgression of the law, according to 1 John 3 verse 4. However, we have to be careful because there's a difference, like we discussed earlier in this session today, between sin that is rebellious and sin that's on purpose and I don't care but I'm going to sin anyway kind of sin, and sin that's I didn't even know. Wow, I didn't even realize, Lord. Some people actually do not know. Many are Christians, do not understand that the Sabbath is still for today because they've inherited lies and they've believed them. Many of them believe the lie that the feasts are simply for the Jewish people, right? It's a lie they've inherited. They believe it. And it's hard for them to swallow new information because, it's hard for all of us. Because it means we need to admit we're wrong and there's other things involved. And it's just, people don't go there, and it's not even spoken of sometimes. So sometimes, there's many reasons for why people don't follow certain commandments or certain things. And it's complicated, and we don't know the hearts of men. Sometimes they just don't know. And in those cases, I believe there's grace and mercy, just like there's sometimes things that I didn't know was a sin until later. And then I realized it's a sin, and then I repent and I go on. I remember when, I started trying to do things, it's like, wow, I did it, and then later I'm like, oh no, I did it all wrong. But God has mercy because he knows I didn't understand it yet, and then he shows me information, and then I need to accept it. But ultimately, I believe the people who Yeshua is saying, depart from me, you worker of lawlessness, or those who are rebelling again, who are willfully, habitually, on purpose, just denying the truth, and even though they know it's the truth, they don't want to follow it. They reject it. They push against it because they want to rather do something that pleases their flesh. And so I want to just read Matthew 5:19. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Okay, so Yeshua talks about those who will be least, who teaches that the commandments are to be relaxed. So there are people who are saved, in other words, who taught that the commandments are to be relaxed and who didn't teach others to keep them. But they will be called least in the kingdom. So we see now that this is not necessarily always going to mean that people aren't saved. And I will also go further to say that we can't judge that. Like I can never say who is saved and who's not saved, because it has so much to do with the heart, and who knows the hearts of men except for the Lord. I don't even know my heart as well as the Lord knows it. So we never can pass judgment on salvation. But we ought, the question was, should I be worried about my brothers and sisters? Well, yeah, that's why I'm like, brothers and sisters, I have 300 plus videos on this channel trying to reach people with the truth, because I am worried for people. I want them to know, because I love God's people. Like, I love people. And so, yes, we have to be on fire and trying to reach people, but also be patient and kind and willing to understand where they're coming from, because sometimes who are you to know the truth? Sometimes people would think, things like, well, are you telling me 2,000 years of church tradition is wrong and stuff like that? And that's, questions like that. There's a lot of obstacles for people sometimes. And we need to find a way to reach them through that all, and just pray for them and pray God's grace and mercy over them as well. Like Moses said, Lord, have mercy on these people, even blot my name out of the book, but don't pass judgment on them, because they don't understand what they're doing. When they built that golden calf, they didn't truly understand what they were doing, for example. Moses stood in the gap for them, and God had mercy, and we ought to do the same for our brothers and sisters, and not condemn them, not judge them, not think of ourselves as better, because we break just as many commandments often as they do, just in different ways, and all in ignorance often. Please watch my video called Christians Keep Torah Too, because they do. Really, they do. I know that sounds controversial, but they do. They're, except for, the most on fire true Christians, right? I'm talking about those kind of people. They love the Lord, and they're really doing a lot for the kingdom, and they may miss the typical mainstream Christian, may miss something here or something there, but they generally keep most of what Yeshua came to teach. So watch my video, Christians Keep Torah Too, if you want to know more about this topic. Okay.